Hey everybody, welcome to today's session with the incredible Michael Roderick. And we we were having a little bit of a chuckle before we went live because this is the reality of life as the CEO of your own company. So about 4 minutes ago, I was out on our farm moving horses from one paddock back into all of the barns, literally herding like 10 yearlings across a road knowing that I was going live in about 35 seconds. So here was me in my farm body warmer, hair not brushed, anything. And now here we are live. And Michael's childminder slept in. She's going to be ringing the doorbell mid live stream. But as we said, it's all good. We'll have a laugh about it. So if Michael has to like skedaddle for 2 seconds to open the door, it is all good. I always laugh about the things that we are all juggling behind the scenes,
Oh
and it's
man.
like you're going along with it on, and nobody realizes the things that are going on in the background when we are trying to run and build these businesses with families, with busy lives, and in my case, a horse farm. Anyway, so good to have you here, Michael. Really
Yeah.
excited to jump into our conversation today about the triple threat. And I had the privilege of getting to meet you through our wonderful friend Selena Sue.
Yes.
We've been connected inside of her container. We met then in person in New York, and I got the honor of sitting beside you for one of the sessions and truly got blown away by your triple threat. And I know we've been having a lot of conversations since about that triple threat and how people are misaligned in their marketing, messaging, positioning, and even their infrastructure and their systems that they are using inside of their businesses because they don't know what they are. So, first things
Yeah.
first, I would love you to kind of do a deep dive and tell everybody all about the triple threat,
Sure.
what it's all about, so that we can kind of then bring this around to everybody who's watching their businesses. What does it mean for them? What does it mean for their infrastructure, for their systems, for their lead
Yeah.
generation? So take it away because I think this is just such a unique view on this whole kind of online industry expert space.
Sure. Um, yeah. So basically, it came from the fact that in the theater world there is the concept of the triple threat, where in essence you have a actor, singer, dancer, right? Like your performers are able to do all three things. And what a lot of folks don't know, if you're not in the theater world, is the order of those things is actually incredibly important to your success.
Mhm.
So let's say your acting is your top talent, then you want to be focused on film and TV. You want to be focused on straight plays. You want to be focused on musicals that have a really good book because that's going to show off that acting talent. Whereas if singing is kind of a second thing for you, you're probably not going to go for the really, really big musicals and go for the big like belting numbers because you're not that good, as a singer. Like you're great, like you've got enough talent, but acting sort of at the top. And then of course if dancing is on the bottom and dancing's the one you kind of work on, then you're far more likely to want to stay away from a show like 42nd Street, which is very, very dance heavy. So
Yes.
when I started to think about this concept, and I thought about it specifically in the world of subject matter experts and specifically the world of thought leadership, what I ended up landing on was that there was also a triple threat there. And that was the scientist, the celebrity, and the magician.
Lovely.
So the scientist loves the subject matter. They're really, really great at sort of digging into things. They're not bothered at all by research or any of those things that feel boring to a lot of people. For a scientist, they're just like, yeah, let me at it, right? Like
Yeah.
let me sort of dig
Yeah.
into
Okay,
it.
so that
Yeah.
resonates with me. So it's like I love them down rabbit holes, like
Yes.
things, discovering things. Okay, right?
Yeah, so that's the scientist, and then the celebrity is not really interested in any of the science stuff, right? Because the celebrity is very relationship driven, they're very personality driven, they love connecting with people, they love being out in front of people. But in addition, a big factor of the celebrity is that they're really good at making everybody else feel like a celebrity. So like when you're talking to a celebrity, you feel like, wow, I feel so special,
Yeah.
kind of thing,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So then the final category is the magician, and the magician is 100% wired for novelty. So this is a person who, if this is your top talent, you're very, very good at innovation. You're very good at innovative thinking. You're very good at sort of coming up with new ideas and new concepts. You might be really good at language and coming up with really cool words and names for things. But because you're so focused on innovation, it's really hard for you to repeat the same thing over and over again, even if it's successful,
Yes,
because
because you're
magicians
bored.
tend to get bored, right?
Yes, love it, right? And then so like we'll jump to how this should play out in your marketing in a little
Yeah,
while. First, I'd
yeah,
love to kind of dive in before we get there. What mistakes are thought leaders, people in the expert industry making in their marketing decisions, how they're putting themselves out there, that is actually costing them business because they aren't aware of whether they are the scientist or the magician or the celebrity?
yeah. So probably the most common one is that scientists tend to be given the marketing advice to become celebrities. They're almost always sort of given this idea of, you have to be on lives all the time, you have to be out there, you have to get your ideas out there, and all of these elements. But for scientists, it's really hard for them to just like turn on the camera and be like,
Yeah.
I'm going to present my concepts, or sometimes even do something like a talk, right?
Yeah.
So for a scientist, it actually makes a lot more sense to
Hmm.
find celebrities and search out interview opportunities, because as a scientist, you can talk about your subject matter all day. It's the aspect of not having anybody to talk to that's causing you the anxiety. So the joke I often make about this is it's much easier to be the Dr. Phil to somebody's Oprah than to be Dr. Phil trying to be Oprah. And that's what a lot of scientists sort of fall into when it comes to their marketing choices and the work that they're doing.
I love that. So basically, if I think this through, then the case of what's actually happening to the scientist is they're watching maybe influencers, celebrity types saying to them, "Here's what I'm doing. This is what you got to go and do as well to be successful." And then they're trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. They're trying to
Yep.
be something that they're not, so that they look like everybody else online. But that's actually costing them money. Yeah.
Yes, 100%, 100%, because they're not showing their expertise, because they're basically trying to come up with like the tips and the tricks, right?
Yes.
And for them, for a scientist, that's going to actually feel kind of boring. Like they're not going to be
Yeah, it's like
interested in tips and
tactical, yeah,
tricks.
tactical level stuff, and you're like, oh, there's so much more to this. Like I can't just share these little
Exactly.
sound bites. I need to talk for like 4 hours on YouTube to truly explain your expertise in a certain area. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
What mistakes? Let's talk through the other two
Sure.
variations then. So, what does that look like for the celebrity? What does that look like for the magician?
Yeah, so a lot of the time the celebrity is often put into this world where they're expected to do a lot of the scientific elements, right? So
Mhm.
the celebrity is often put into this world where it's like, here's the structure and the funnel and the process and like all these things. And for a celebrity, that's going to feel boring, and that's not going to feel very interesting,
Yeah.
right? they want to just be out front. They want to be connecting with people. They want to be building relationships. So you'll sometimes get celebrities who the marketing advice that they're being given is, well, just start your mailing list and start writing articles and writing posts and all these things. And there are a lot of celebrities who writing for them actually feels like this, like, very, very challenging, like push a boulder up the hill, but get them on camera and they can go forever. They can
just chat all day. Okay, right.
Exactly. So for a lot of those folks, it's more saying, okay, well, if I know that I'm far better on camera and I'm far better with people, I should focus my marketing on things that are very relationship oriented and focused, like doing live streams, doing presentations, getting people together, hosting gatherings, like all of those elements, as opposed to a lot of the scientist work, which is totally behind the scenes, like write your emails and send your emails out, all these types of things. And it's not that they can't have a mailing list, but they may want to actually transcribe the interviews and the conversations that they're having and use that as the writing, as opposed to sitting down and trying to, again, sort of force themselves into a model that doesn't quite make sense for them.
Okay, brilliant. And then how do we make it easy? And we'll speak to diagnostic assessments and how you can truly put your essence of whether you're the scientist, the magician, or the celebrity into those diagnostic assessments.
Yeah.
We'll talk about all of that in a moment. But how do we have people, first of all, know, apart from what we've just talked about, where automatically I'm like, I know what I am.
Yeah.
Okay. How do we have people truly understand which version they are, and then, as opposed to just talking about the mistakes, what do we want them to focus on instead? How can they really, really lean into their type and really lean into making sure that they're growing their business, doing those marketing activities that just feel easy? So that there are things that I do that I find really, really easy, and people are like, how can you do that? Like, how can you find that? How can you find that interesting? And I love it, but on the flip side, they're doing things that I'm like, oh, I would come out in a cold sweat if I had to do it that way. So I think it's like, how can we give people almost permission to say, this is who I am, this is how I'm going to show up in the world, these are the marketing efforts that I am going to lean into, and that's okay.
Yeah. So I think ultimately when you're deciding sort of where the order is of the triple threat in your top talent, that idea of ease is probably the most important, right? If it feels like you just do this and you don't really have to think about it, it just like comes very naturally to you, then chances are that's probably where your top talent is. So if you don't get bored with like the nitty gritty of things, and you can just like get into it all, and you can think in this like very, very methodical way. You could read a 58-page research paper and it didn't bother you. Chances are you're probably more of a scientist, right? Like that's probably more of the direction that you want. Conversely, if people are always telling you, wow, it's like, you just like, every time I'm with you, I want to spend more time with you. You're so cool. I love you, all this stuff. Or like, how do you talk to people like that? It's so crazy how you can just talk to a stranger and like make them a friend.
Walk up to a networking event and start chatting, whereas I'm like, oh,
right?
What do you say? Okay,
exactly. So
I think I'm learning I am not a celebrity.
Yeah, so that's the thing, right? Like, so for celebrities, like, that's so natural. Like, they couldn't even think about a world in which they wouldn't just be like connecting with people and just like getting to know folks and like spending time with, like, they can't even imagine a world where that doesn't exist, right? And then the magician, if basically you just never run out of ideas and people are constantly saying to you, I never thought about it that way, I never saw it that way, oh my God, how did you come up with that? Like those types of things. And again, it feels easy for you. Chances are magician is at the top, right? So now when you start to think about it from the standpoint of the marketing and the work that you're doing, specifically if you're doing this from an expert sort of standpoint, if you're a scientist, you are able to, you have the fortitude to dive deeper into a subject than most people. So scientists do very, very well by writing the massive post. They do very well by coming up with
my data and insights report where I'm like dissecting the data of what's going on in the expert industry.
Exactly.
That just comes easy. Whereas somebody else, that would be like sticking pins in your eyes.
Exactly. And then if you're the celebrity, right? If you are looking at the marketing types of activities that you're doing and you're asking yourself, how are those activities giving me that rush of engagement with other people? So celebrities can get a lot done on their marketing side literally by just being on social media and DMing people and commenting and having conversations and getting on live streams and doing like walk-in talks and all of those types of things. And they're going to get way more traction out of that in terms of clients and opportunities than they are coming up with a 35-page report, because they're going to just like, they're not going to be able to do it. Right. Like it's not going to really work for them. And then finally with the magicians, because they're so wired for novelty, if you're a magician, you've got to always think about what is an innovative marketing model or thing that is going to make it so that you don't feel bored. So a lot of the time, the magicians, you're going to really thrive in looking for new marketing channels, new marketing angles. A lot of the magicians will be the ones to be like, okay, yeah, I'm doing a live stream on this platform, but this platform's starting to like really take off. Let me go and explore that platform.
I love that. Yeah. And that, I think that ties in really well with the diagnostic assessment, because one of the beauties of that, and it's almost like a secondary gain that people don't realize when they're actually building it, is that, like, say for example, I'll just talk you through mine. So we have this context. We score our leads on 9 different areas. Okay, so leads, offer, sales, team, process and system, their ecosystem, their diagnostic ability, and their leverage with relationships in the market. Okay, so people get scores in these areas. Now, I have what we call JV partners, where I am able to, like, say, for example, for YouTube. I don't know the first thing about YouTube. I don't want to help people with YouTube because it is not my zone of expertise by any stretch of the imagination. But what I have is a partner that I'm able to send clients to where they have told us inside of the diagnostic assessment that is the thing that they want to focus on. Okay, so that is one way of using it. But for this magician who continually comes up with new offers, what happens in the back end of your diagnostic is that you really get to see what people are struggling with the most. You can see literally like X number of % of people are struggling with this. This is very, very painful for them. And it gives you that opportunity then to create new offers over and over and over again, new ways of serving these people. When we ask the right questions in the right way inside of these assessments, we then have the opportunity to create offers for these people, and that would then lend itself, if I'm correct, that would lend itself really well to the celebrity. Is that right?
Yes. Not the celebrity, sorry, 100%. Because then that person wants to feel right, like the celebrity, like they want to feel like this thing is specifically for me, right?
Yes. Okay, yeah, so that works for them. And then the scientist, I'm understanding from a marketing perspective, these diagnostic assessments for the scientist is you're going to be able to geek out on all of the data and the insight that you get into your market, the trend analysis, being kind of ahead of the curve, also being able to position yourself as the authority in your space. Because you have all of this data coming from your market, you can then position yourself as the person who has sat down and collated and reviewed all of the data and are then presenting it back to the market. So I think that's kind of like, you can see the connection there from that point of view. Let's talk a little bit more about sales mechanisms for each of the 3 types. Do you see that been different as well? Just like I'd love to kind of zoom way out
Yeah, of
and
course.
how knowing your type, whether you're a scientist, a magician, or a celebrity, how
Yeah.
does that weave into almost every part of your business?
Yeah. So in essence, there when we're thinking about sales, right? And we're thinking about the fact that we're solving a problem when we're talking to somebody from a sales standpoint, right? Like we're getting a sense of what their issue is, and then we are saying, I have something that's going to alleviate the pain that you're experiencing or solve the problem that you're having or decrease the friction, right, of the process. So the thing is, every single person is on a cycle, and
Mm-hmm.
the very beginning of that cycle is clarification, where what they're really seeking is trying to figure something out, right? Like that's really what they want to do. Sometimes they want to name something, sometimes they want to figure out like what does this offer look like? How do I change, how do I change my model? Like those types of things. They're looking for clarification. They're trying to figure out. But once you have something that's really effective, the very next thing that you focus on is amplification, where basically you're like, you want more people to know about it, you want more people to have it, you want to grow, you want to build, you want to be in sort of that particular place. And if you do get to that point where you have a lot of amplification and things are going well, you then finally get into the final stage of stabilization, where
Mm-hmm.
what you're thinking about is, how do I develop a process or a system to make this more of a flywheel for me? I know that I've got a proven thing. Now I got to figure it out. So the thing is, from a sales standpoint, if somebody is seeking amplification, but
Mm-hmm.
you are, say, a scientist,
Mm-hmm.
you are far more likely to get a lot more traction out of the person who's seeking stabilization,
Yeah.
because scientists are very good at basically being like, here's a process, whereas
Mm-hmm.
celebrities are usually much, much better at amplification, because
Mm-hmm.
celebrities know a lot of people, they have a lot of connections, they have a lot of
Yes.
possibilities, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Whereas magicians are far more suited for clarification. So if somebody's coming and trying to figure something out, they want ideas. They want the innovative mind of the magician. But
Magician.
again, if you came to me, right, and you were like, Mike, can you help me develop a systemized process for building the business? I'm actually not the right person,
Yes.
because
Yes.
that's not the way my brain works. But if you're like, Mike, I've got this offer and it's not working, it's not converting, and I need a new angle or a new thing to call this offer, my
Mm-hmm.
magician element would be perfect sort of for that. So if people are thinking from a sales standpoint, I think you have to ask that question: am I selling to somebody who's seeking clarification, amplification, or stabilization? And how do I actually line up with what
Mm.
my top talent is?
Absolutely, because I think even from my point of view, so I'm feeling very much that I'm a scientist. I am the process, system, infrastructure, scalable assets person. But let's pretend, so if somebody's really struggling to sell their offers and they are a scientist trying to sell a magician offer or vice versa, or a celebrity offer, this is where again there's this misalignment, not only in your lead
Yes.
generation activities, what platforms you're on, how you're showing up, how you're trying to fit yourself a square peg into a round hole from a marketing perspective. But if
Yep.
what we're trying to sell, I'm sorry, I'm a scribbler, so like drawing diagrams here. So if you are trying to sell an offer that's not actually aligned with who you are as a person, your market's going to feel that. They're going to smell
Yep.
that, and that's going to obviously affect your conversion rate.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
if we think about it, right, going back to the aspect of the scientist trying to do the celebrity model, you
Mm-hmm.
can feel the disconnect when that scientist goes and like tries to throw out tips and tricks. You can almost feel them
Mm-hmm.
feeling shallow with what they're explaining and what they're breaking down, right? Whereas if you are truly a scientist, like, you're not going to record a 5-minute tips and tricks. You're going to record a like 2-hour YouTube video where you're going to break down like all of the like minuscule points. And there's going to be an audience that is going to watch that entire
Yes.
2 or 3 hour YouTube video because they want to figure out sort of all of those points.
Brilliant. So question for you.
Yeah.
Do scientists attract scientists, celebrities attract celebrities, and magicians attract magicians, or does it not work like that?
It does not work like that. Like every once in a while, like you will have instances where like magicians will get along with magicians, scientists will get along with magicians, etc. But if you're dealing from a selling standpoint, right, you're just not as compelling if you're the exact same thing as me, right? So like
if you're trying to build somebody who's going to automate and put infrastructure behind your entire business, and you are a magician and you don't know how, you actually want to hire the scientist that can do that.
Exactly.
And vice versa.
Exactly. Yeah. And you see this all the time where if you basically sell to the exact same talent, right? What happens is there's this friction where they feel like they know just as much or sometimes more than you. So there's this like back and forth client relationship that just does not really work very well.
Brilliant. And I think that's two avenues. These are just coming up at me, and I promise I won't talk for 10 hours. But another one that's coming up for me is team. So when we think about it, and like I built the assessment for Jen Kem's book Unicorn Team, where we had the leadership types, mobilizer, strategizer, and visionizer, and then understanding what type everybody in your team are, so that we don't have people who are all vision and no mobilization, or vice versa. I'm also thinking about my team now. Is there a team component? Is there a team consideration for having the person on the team who is the magician, having the scientist, having the celebrity? So talk me through that from a team perspective.
Yeah. So 100%. So one very important thing is whatever the top talent is of whoever is in charge is going to affect everything else, right?
Okay.
So let's say, for example, I'm the CEO and I am more of a scientist. I'm actually going to have a lot of problems with the randomness that a magician sort of brings to the table. Right.
Yes.
So I'm not going to want to put, if I'm a scientist and I like processes, I'm never going to want to put a magician in a process oriented role. Okay. I'm not going to want to put them into something where they're, and it's not going to be good for them. Right. I'm going to want to put a magician in some sort of innovation focused role. Like I'm going to want somebody who is more of an ideas person in that innovation side of things. But let's say I'm deciding I want like a COO. I am probably going to focus on getting a scientist for that COO position. Like it's not going to make sense to have a celebrity, in that role. And conversely, I'm not going to want to put a scientist a lot of the time in a sales role that is forward facing, right? Like if I want my salesperson to be on calls and have conversations and go out for lunches and dinners and all these things, I'm not going to want a scientist.
Yeah, you're not going to want the person behind the computer to do that. Yeah,
exactly. But I might be very well versed by putting a scientist into some sort of customer service role, or some role that is involved in like, what does the delivery look like, and are we hitting our benchmarks on that delivery.
Okay, interesting. And then following on from this, do we all have a little bit of all three, but we have one dominant? So for example, and you might be like high, medium, low across each of the three types. And then you'll have, so say for example, for me, I'm trying to think through, I would say that I would probably be scientist, magician, celebrity. I think,
Yep.
if I did an assessment to find out.
Yeah.
So do we all have, or are some people like zero celebrity and 100% magician, or 100% scientist, 0% celebrity? Talk me through, how does that work?
Yeah. So there are some people who are like legitimate triple threats where all three are pretty strong, and then there are others where it's going to be over indexed in one area, right?
Yeah.
So whatever
Okay.
your top talent is usually, again, that thing that just like it, you just do it. It's so
Mhm.
easy. It's kind of nothing. The middle one, you're thinking from the standpoint of you're really good at it, right? But you're not as good as that top one. And then the
Yeah.
third one is always you're working on it, right? Like there are elements of it that don't work. So I'm magician, celebrity, scientist, right?
Yeah.
So I'm incredibly innovative in terms of how I think, and I get bored very, very easily. 9 times out of 10, if a client shares something, I'll hear 99% of it in black and white, and I'll only hear one thing in color. And I'll be like, that's the thing that's valuable. That's the thing that should be sold. And that's very, very natural, right, to me.
Yes. Yes. Okay.
But I also love relationship building. I connect people all the time. I can be on camera and I'm engaging and have a conversation. I don't have a
Yeah.
problem with it, right? But you're never going to find me shooting a video of me being like, this is what I ate this morning. Like I'm never going to do that. Like that's not my personality, sort of my world. And then finally, on the scientist side, I do have a very methodical way of thinking. I'm good at developing frameworks and models and things of
Mhm.
that
Yeah.
nature.
That's your
But
superpower.
but I'm never gonna sit and read a 78-page study. I'm gonna look for what are the kind of key points of that study.
Yes.
And with the scientist side, I am always going to basically reach a point where some element of the work bores me
Mhm.
unless I find some element of the work that has variety. So
Mhm.
in doing work in thought leadership, that's the thing that helps me as a magician, because everybody's thought leadership is basically tied to their personal beliefs and stories and like who they are. So
Yeah.
that is always varied. So I
Yeah, so
always
that,
have
that
new
scratches
sandbox
the
to play.
magician. That scratches the magician itchy. Then that you,
Exactly.
it's not like boring, repetitive, interesting. Okay, and
Yeah.
then it's like, I think there's this like dual position in this. So for me, like what I've heard so far is, from a marketing perspective, lean into who you are in terms of
Yes.
choices of platforms, all of that kind of thing. But on the flip side of that, we want to surround ourselves with skill sets that we don't have or that aren't our strongest strength. So that
Yes.
we have, so for example, if you are a celebrity and you have no infrastructure in your business whatsoever, that thing's going to fall over because
Yep.
it's completely tied to you showing up doing all the celebrity
Yep.
things. So it's almost about surrounding yourself with the either the assets or the team in the back end to support the bit that you aren't great at, and then vice versa. If you are the scientist and you do have the infrastructure and all of those things, what are the pieces that we want to support ourselves with through other people to help us in those areas that we're not as strong in? Is that do I have that right?
Yes, yeah, exactly. Like we always want to basically find the pairings, right? Like that's what we want to think about. We want to think about, okay, if I am really strong in one area, who
Mhm.
in my life is going to complement me? And if I'm going to sell,
Mhm.
where so I used to say this all the time in the theater world. I'd say go where you're awesome, not where you're ordinary, right?
Yeah.
So you think about whatever that top talent is for a scientist.
Mhm.
Let's say you're a scientist and you're really, really great at that particular element. Somebody who doesn't think about science at all is going to be fascinated with you. Whereas the people who are already very process oriented, they're just going to kind of compare you to all the other people who are process oriented, right?
Mhm.
So it's that aspect of always figuring out like, well, what are the complements here to this thing that I'm doing. And it's great for partnerships, it's great for teams, but it's also really great as you're exploring your offers, because in some cases you may want to experiment with more of a scientific type of offer and see, would this actually work better for, for my audience? Because you could bring your unique ability to that level of offer. So a scientist, let's say, for example, may be like, this is an offer workshop that I'm creating. They've got a very big, interesting like structure that they use for it. But a magician could also do an offer workshop, and then they're going to do this like weird experiential way of building the offer. So it's still in that category, but it's just not. Yeah.
Absolutely. So this just gets more and more layers, because again, as you're talking, I'm like, right, we've covered marketing, we've covered sales, we've covered team, but like this could equally apply to your private life and marriage. And why sometimes I look at my husband like he has 40 heads, because I'm like, what way does your brain work? It just doesn't work the same as mine.
Exactly.
Why don't we think this like process orientated way? And he's like, what? I don't think like that.
Yeah, exactly. And this happens a lot with collaborators or in personal relationships, because you'll have somebody who they are way more scientist oriented in their thinking. And if you've got like, if you're married to a celebrity who like does not care about the, those types of things, you're literally like, why don't you get like the fact that
like,
the trash
to me,
go out on this day?
Yeah, to me, it's like everything is process, organization, structure. Like, it's just so easy when you run your life like that.
Yes, exactly.
He is not like that. So I'm just like, this is like not just for business. This is also for.
Yeah, it crosses the boundaries, and I've had this conversation with people where they're like, "Oh my God, my husband's a scientist," or "Oh, my wife is such a magician. I totally get it now."
And now you get who they are, and you're like, "Oh, that's why you are like what you are." Okay, brilliant. I love it. So, what other aspects? Let's circle back to business. Let's park.
This is Diana. She's saying hello. I'll be done in a few minutes. Okay. Yeah. What do you have to tell me?
Could you quiet it down so I could hear the doorbell ring?
Okay, I will. I'll quiet it down.
I didn't hear the doorbell ring at all.
Yeah, it's gonna ring. Okay, no worries. Diana told me I'm too loud.
That's all good. That's what we said. If you're just jumping in at the top of the call, we said the hilarity of running a business with kids and horses.
With kids.
With kids especially. Yeah, there are no words, but hats off to anybody who's doing it, because we all get it.
Oh yeah.
the juggling 30 seconds before a call. It's like, oh, there's the kids. Go, get out. Oh, we all do it.
Yes, indeed.
Right. So we've talked about. Let's go back to business. So marketing, sales, team. Are there any other permutations? Anything else we want to think about there from the celebrity, magician, scientist point of view?
I think one thing that's not talked about a lot is the sort of like networking, relationship building dynamic within business, right?
Okay. Interesting.
And I think that if you are more, so a lot of the networking education that we get is very much like go out there, meet people, connect with people, network, like all of these elements, and it's done in this sort of very, very broad way. But if you're a magician, then you're going to get bored going to the exact same events within your industry. It's just not going to be as compelling for you. So as a magician, you won't be able to just like go and be like, I'm going to go to the tech conference every single year. Like eventually you're just going to like just get bored with it.
This is interesting. So for me, that feels like going back to an event. So say we went to an event together, going back to an event where I know you're going to be there makes me feel so much more comfortable. Whereas the magician would be like, oh, I've already met her.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah. So for a magician, so often, and this is if you're selling, like if you have a product and you're selling an event, right? Or off of your, sort of offer side of things, if you've got magicians in your audience, a lot of them are basically going to ask like, who's new next time, right? Yeah. So like they won't just keep sort of going, sort of over and over again. Whereas, like you said, with scientists will want to basically be like, okay, who are my key people?
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
going to like stick
Who
with
are my handful, and I'm going to stick with them because I know
exactly.
it, and I know I can handle it, and I know that I've had that whole awkward networking conversation is done. Now we're like, really interesting. Okay, I love that.
Exactly. And then the celebrities love the like center of attention. They love the like gathering component. They love being the one who's sort of like putting everything
Are they the host?
together.
They're actually the hosts. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, they love hosts. So a celebrity is more likely to, let's say an event happens, right? A celebrity is more likely to talk a lot more at the event, right? Because they want to share their expertise and their ideas. And celebrities are also more likely to basically be like, hey, we're hanging out at the event. We're all going for drinks later. Why don't you come and hang out when we go for drinks at, such and such? Whereas the scientists are going to basically like look for who's the person who's inviting everybody out for drinks. Because for the scientists, a lot of the time they're like, it feels weird. I'm not quite sure, kind of thing.
Interesting. Okay, brilliant. Right. So I want to, so this is so fascinating, but I also know that your absolute zone of genius is helping people to turn their brilliance and their expertise and their thought leadership into frameworks. And I do not want to end the session because I know we're running out of time. I don't want to end the session without weaving this into framework creation, because that is your jam. That is what you just have a conversation with you, and then boom, there's a framework. So talk me through that process before we wrap.
Yeah, so a lot of the time, when it comes to framework building, the biggest element of developing a framework is you start by challenging a dominant narrative. So you find a thing that everybody believes or has seen as sort of the truth, and then you say, I disagree with this thing. So if you are more of a scientist, your disagreement is going to be very, very granular and like steeped very, very deep in the industry, because you've actually done kind of all of that study, right? Like you've really kind of like broken it down. So your framework is going to feel very, very methodical. It's going to feel very steeped in research and like understanding and all those types of things. So think thought leadership of somebody like a Malcolm Gladwell. It's kind of a classic sort of like scientific, like here are all of the pieces, right? But if you're a celebrity, in many cases, your challenge of the dominant narrative is going to be more from like a gut, and the framework that you create is going to be more of a like relational framework. A lot of times you're going to like tell a story and basically be like, this is what this is, right? So a perfect example of that would be like a Gary Vaynerchuk, who would be like, I just did this thing and this guy tried to sell me hot sauce, so I'm going to call my framework the hot sauce technique, right? Like that's a classic sort of like celebrity move, right?
Okay.
But then the final one with the magician, your challenge of the dominant narrative is always going to be looking at what is everybody saying, and then what is this like tiny wrinkle or this tiny shift that most people are not paying attention to. So if you're a magician, you're way more likely to be like, this is what everybody believes, this is what they understand, but there's this one quirky, weird thing, and I want to tell you about the one quirky, weird thing. So a perfect example of a magician would be somebody like an Adam Grant, who was like, here's givers and takers, and oh, by the way, there's these matchers in the middle, right? And his like big thesis was the idea that with the give and take book, the big thesis was everybody thinks that givers succeed, and that's all that there is to it. But the nuance that he found was that givers are both at the very top of the success ladder and at the very bottom. And he then frames it as givers have to make very specific choices in order to not be taken advantage of. So do you see how like that framework is very, very different than a Malcolm Gladwell, like 10,000 hours framework is very, very different than a Gary Vaynerchuk jab, 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 right hook, framework.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Okay, so love this. So, and again, like I'll speak to it in a moment before we wrap. Just the opportunity that you and I have kind of come together to create for people, because
Yeah.
when you think about diagnostic assessments, stage one of any diagnostic assessment, which is the best way to bring qualified leads into your business, is it all. So, step one is your framework. Okay, and Michael and I have come together to first of all work with Michael to ascertain, are you that scientist, are you that magician, are you that celebrity, making sure that you're actually building your business in a way that suits who you are, and then turning your expertise into that framework so that then you can have that diagnostic assessment. Because if you don't have that framework, if you don't have your IP out of your brain into something that is branded and out there online, you just become lost. And correct me if I'm wrong, Michael, but you just become lost in a sea of noise. You could become
Yeah.
one of many, and the only way that you can then stand out is by trying these different tips and tricks, as opposed to being a Malcolm Gladwell, as opposed to being these big names who just become synonymous with their thing. They become the one, that category of one in their world, because of their framework. Okay, and then the framework has to, so there's no, if it stops there with the framework, that's great having that piece. But if you don't actually have a way to convert that framework into high ticket clients, into clients every single day of the week, then it just becomes reliant on you showing up, on you being visible. Whereas you have that infrastructure, you have that diagnostic assessment that is built from your framework, then you're able to point people into the right offer that suits them because of the diagnostic. And we can see how this whole thing just really starts to weave together. So Michael and I have come together to craft this for you. So if you're interested, there's a QR code there on screen. Make sure that you zap that, and we will support you to kind of build out that entire end-to-end, both framework and that diagnostic assessment. Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, Maeve, the thing that's so important about what you're sharing is there are so many people who have taken the time to really think about the framework and the model and the things that they want to create, but they haven't taken the time to think about how are they making sure that they're getting the qualified leads. And that's a major part of the assessment element, is that these people are going to answer questions so that if they are in your world, you've already got a very clear picture of where they are and whether or not their price point fits what you're doing, whether or not they really, going back to what we were talking about before, whether or not they really are seeking a stabilization offer or a clarification offer. Like, you're going to learn so much
Yes,
from
absolutely.
that. Yeah.
Yes, and then being able to point them. One of the beauty of these assessments is that you can point people to the most appropriate thing for them based on what they've just told you. But none of this is manual. This is not hopping on endless sales calls trying to figure out what people want and trying to, again, put square pegs into round holes. You have this infrastructure does all of that for you. So only people see the right message and the right offer and from the right person at the right time.
Yeah, I love that.
Brilliant. Right. Anything I haven't covered? Anything you were hoping to dig into that we've kind of skimmed over the top of, or do you feel like we've covered it all?
Yeah, no, I think this we've covered a lot here today. But the thing that I'll sort of leave with is it is staggering the number of people who abandon their superpowers in the world. Like, when you have something that you're so talented at, but then somebody teaches you something from a marketing standpoint, or you learn something, or you see somebody else do something, and you step away from who you are. So the one thing that, like, I would say to just leave with is this element of make sure that you are being true to your superpowers so that you can really make things happen in your business, in your life.
I love this because I think the opposite happened to me. I never showed who I really was in the first place, because being into the data and the systems and the automations and all of that infrastructure piece didn't come across as cool or fancy online.
Yeah.
I never shared that side of things, and people discovered it after they signed up with me that that was actually my superpower. When, and this is not that long ago, this is only like a year and a bit ago, I decided to pull that band-aid off and then start showing people online how much of a geek I really was, and things exploded because
Yep.
up until that I was really like, I nobody knew that I was even into those things because it wasn't the shiny fancy pony, online, and what
Yep.
people told you to talk about. And that's really interesting. Now, as you say that, I'm just like, that was literally the turning point when I was kind of like, saw it, I'm just going to like be Maeve the geek, and that's fine. And that is actually, as you say, that's a superpower, and that's when things exploded. No
Yeah.
shit. Brilliant. I love it. We'll leave it there. Thank you so much for taking the time to come on. As we said, so we'll put the link down again. The QR code is there. If you're interested in working with both Michael and I, just pop in a quick application. We'll have a look. And if we're able to help you, absolutely amazing. And if we're not, we will point you in the direction of somebody that can. And once again, thanks a million, Michael, for taking the time today. I have really enjoyed this conversation. And now my brain is off like down another rabbit hole.
I love it. I love it.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, and take care, and I'll chat.